What you see here is a wall, but it's not a wall designed to protect the country and to stop people from entering. No, this wall was built to prevent people from fleeing their own country and to keep people in. What you see here is the Berlin Wall. After the end of World War II in 1945, Germany was split into two separate countries in 1949. West Germany became a free, democratic, and capitalist country, and East Germany became a socialist country. So many Germans left East Germany that the Socialist Party had no choice but to build a wall to keep people in. In 1961, the famous Berlin Wall was built. However, many East Germans still tried to flee to West Germany, and hundreds died on the way since they were shot by soldiers at the border. In this video, I want to talk about the history of socialism in Germany. East Germany is a great example of a socialist country. While West Germany prospered under capitalism and became a free and rich country, East Germany became a country that terrorized its own people. As a German myself, I'm quite glad that the socialist era of Germany ended. Right now, many young people advocate for socialism while they have no idea what it actually means. Let's make one thing clear. Denmark, Sweden, and other Northern European countries are often named as an example of successful socialism, but they are not socialist. They do have similarities to actual socialist countries, namely free healthcare and free education, but they have a free market economy. And that is the crucial point. Real socialism means that the government owns all means of productions and private companies do not exist, which is not the case for the countries that I just named. Countries like Sweden and Denmark simply have extremely high taxes and big government, but they are not socialist, and therefore they don't qualify for being a good example of successful socialism. Till this day, there is no example of a country in which socialism worked out very well. Let's have a look at the economic system in East Germany. What was the idea? Well, everyone was supposed to share the wealth, everyone had a job, nobody was poor, and products were cheap and affordable. That's the idea, but just in theory. How was the system implemented? At first, the Socialist Party took over all private companies. The means of production were supposed to be owned collectively by all the people. That's the idea, but in reality, the means of production were simply owned by the government. The government took over every single company, and therefore the government controlled the entire economy, which gave them an enormous amount of power. If you had a private business, the government would knock on your door and demand that you have to hand over your business. You still do the same job, but your business is being expropriated, and from now on you work for the government. This is the basic idea of socialism and explains why a socialist society is never free and always leads to violence against its citizens. Why? It's very simple. If people are not willing to give up their private business, the government will have to force them. What if you don't want to give up your business because it's a family business that was owned by your family for hundreds of years? Well, too bad, since you have no choice. The government will take it away from you. And if you object to it, you will go to prison and maybe you will get killed. Since the government owns all means of production, companies are not free to do whatever they want. In East Germany, the Socialist Party had a 5-year plan for the economy. The 5-year plan regulated how much businesses will produce, which products they produce, and how much the products are supposed to cost. This system is called planned economy. It is the opposite of a free market system that can be found in the Western world today. A planned economy totally ignores the idea of demand and supply. The socialist government is only guessing what people would want and how much they would need. That always led to shortages of certain products. There were no upcoming trends, since the economy could not react fast enough. When modern jeans were invented, many people in East Germany wanted to buy them. But it took just a couple of decades until jeans finally came to East Germany. In a planned economy, innovations don't exist, and new inventions from the West took many years to get to East Germany, and sometimes they would never get there at all. A planned economy doesn't offer a whole variety of different products either. For example, if you want to buy a table, there's only one model, and that's the reason why all apartments look the same in socialist countries. Everyone has the exact same furniture. Buildings also look exactly the same on the outside. They were all built using the exact same building plan. In a socialist country, everybody earns the same amount of money. A doctor, for example, earns the exact same amount as everybody else. Well, there's one exception, of course. If you work for the government and if you are an active member of the Socialist Party, then you can get rich. Simply because literally all socialist governments in history tend to be extremely corrupt. Power corrupts people, and active members of the Socialist Party had an enormous amount of power, since they literally controlled the entire country. In a socialist country, people are guaranteed to have a job. Everyone has a job, except when you are being critical of the government, then you will lose your job. But normally, everyone has a job. How is that possible? Well, the government simply creates new jobs. Sometimes they create jobs that are not even needed, but it doesn't matter since there's no supply and demand system in place. That's one of the reasons for the extremely low productivity in socialist countries. Since everybody is paid the same, people are not motivated to work hard. There's no benefit in working hard. Why would you do more than you have to? Motivation and productivity are therefore extremely low. And that leads to the next problem. The government has to pay for all the government programs. In East Germany, government spending was extremely high while the economy was very weak. So how did they pay for everything? Well, East Germany simply borrowed money from the West. In 1982, East Germany had 25 billion mark of debt, and it was obvious that they could never pay it back. East Germany used some shady methods to make money. For example, they sold prisoners to West Germany and constantly took credits from abroad. The system was simply not sustainable. Well, let's move on to the next point. Was East Germany democratic? You might think that they were democratic because they called themselves democratic. In fact, they called themselves German Democratic Republic. But they were not an actual democracy. An actual democracy has free elections. The institutions of the state are independent of each other, and the court system is not directly controlled by the government. But none of these criteria were fulfilled in East Germany. The entire country was controlled by the Socialist Party, and every important position in the country was controlled by an active member of the party. Other parties existed as well, but they had absolutely no power. East Germany even had elections, but in every election, the Socialist Party would get about 98% of the votes. How did the Socialist Party in Germany make sure that they stay in power? They invented the Ministry of State Security in 1950, called the Stasi. The Stasi was a secret police that was targeting political opponents of the state. The Stasi constantly spied on people, tried to intimidate them, and even arrested the so-called enemies. Opponents were often tortured in prison, and the socialist police tried to make sure that nobody would ever oppose the Socialist Party. People lived in constant fear, and the system made it very difficult to trust anyone because everyone could be a spy. There are stories where spies of the Stasi would even arrest family members if they said something against the government. Sometimes Stasi members would spy on each other since they didn't know that the other person was a spy as well. The Stasi police employed about 90,000 people full-time as official members and between 110,000 and 189,000 as unofficial members. And East Germany only had 16 million inhabitants. This created a constant atmosphere of fear and distrust between the people. Nobody dared to criticize the Socialist Party, and the system worked out very well. Another method of the Socialist Party was propaganda against the capitalist West. The propaganda against the West was massive. They told people that the West and capitalism were very, very evil. In 1953, there was an uprising against the socialist regime in Germany. Many people were dissatisfied with the situation because the economy didn't do very well. There were shortages of food and the planned economy failed to provide people with basic goods. Because the Socialist Party wanted the people to work 10% more for the same wage, a revolt began. People protested for better living conditions and demanded the government to resign. What was the answer from the government? Well, they invaded Berlin with tanks and they were shooting people. Many people died, and there were no protests anymore until 1989, which was 36 years later. In 1989, the socialist system finally collapsed, simultaneously to the collapse of the Soviet Union, and Germany got reunited. West Germany and East Germany became the modern Germany. The history of East Germany is a great example of socialism when it is actually practiced. The idea might sound good, but the outcome is the only thing that matters. And the outcome of socialist countries in the past has been a disaster, a complete disaster. Dear listener, if you made it till this point, you are awesome. You watched the whole video. I'm very proud of you. So please leave a like, comment, and maybe share if you like this video. Thank you a lot.